Hello Cherries fans, it's almost 10 years to the day that Cherries started their first ever promotion campaign. 2014-15 season, that was a good one for us. We got to the top flight, the promised land, for the very first time. And in this video, we want to reminisce over it, but there's a person who's reminisced probably more than most, given he's written a book about it. It is Mr. Michael Dunne. Michael, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thank you, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Now, a lot of people who are listening to this on the podcast and maybe seeing your face and hearing your voice might be thinking, where have I heard that before? You, of course, did All Departments podcast and you did so many episodes of that, and you interviewed some greats along the way, but you tracked the highs and lows, but mainly the highs, I suppose, towards the end of it, of AFC Bournemouth reaching the Premier League.
Yeah, I was really lucky in that when I started the podcast, I think it was our maybe first season in the Championship or the year we went up from League One.
Yeah. And
we just seemed to go up and up and up. And so it perfectly chimed with the success that we had under Eddie Howe. And, the club's never been below the Championship level since then. And, I did my best to chart that. But luckily, just as I was preparing to hang up my microphone, you guys came along and you've taken it on to another level.
And then the first year we went onto YouTube, conversely, we got relegated. But the podcast was out before that. But look, I need to talk about this. This isn't the first book you've written about AFC Bournemouth, is it?
No, I wrote one about Harry Redknapp in his years at Bournemouth, which came out, I think, in 2018. I was at school with Jamie. It was in my year at school. Harry lived not too far away from where I grew up and was watching the Cherries in that era in my childhood. And as it says in the introduction to that book that's just come out, Anything is Possible, I saw that as my high watermark for the Cherries until the Eddie Howe era. And that really blew it out of the water. So, but that was a really difficult book to write because the research was so much, had to go back so far in time to the 70s, the 80s, which I could remember, not the 70s, I'm not that old. Whereas this one, a little bit different. There was a lot out there online, which I found easier to unearth.
I think it's superb from what I've seen. And look, there are other AFC Bournemouth books, for instance, Neil Meldrum's book, The Fall and Rise, and there are others that we can mention that chart the highs and lows of AFC Bournemouth over the last, 10, 15 years, and beyond. This one is different though, because this just hones in on the one season that I think, if you ask any Cherries fan, what was your most favourite ever season? Well, ones that are of a certain age, because the youngsters might not know it. They might just know Premier League football. This would be the season that most fans would probably refer to, do you think?
Yeah. It's difficult to argue against. We had the John Bond era, which was before our time. But the older fans, even older than me, talk about that quite a lot still. We had the Harry era, which I've just mentioned, which was brilliant for me growing up. But this really trumped them all, I felt. The whole Eddie Howe era, that season in particular, it's difficult to argue against that being the greatest season that the club's ever had. It certainly was for me.
You've got to stay tuned because we will be giving a copy away. And if you've watched some of our YouTube videos, you may have had a couple of chances to get an extra entry in already, but we will be giving one away. We'll be getting Michael to sign it as well. But Michael, I find the structure of it really interesting because you've got, of course, the acknowledgements at the start. Jeff Mostyn, who wrote the foreword as well, a bit about the pre-season. And then it's an interview, but interspersed between each of the interviews is you charting each month as well. It was a bit like Michael's match report that you did on, back of the net a few times. But you've got some incredible names there. I mean, we've chatted to a few of these on our channel itself. Do you still feel starstruck when you chat to these players? Because I certainly did when we had them on videos.
Yeah, I mean, we just said really that was our greatest ever season. I think that was our greatest ever team. And speaking to them was quite a thrill, even for somebody of my age. And I've had a little bit of contact with them since, sent them complimentary books for their contribution. And yeah, it's great. I mean, they are, for me, our greatest ever players, and I'm not sure that'll ever change.
Are there any players or any people that you would have liked to have heard from that you maybe didn't in this book?
Yeah, there was a few I chased. Callum Wilson was pretty close. exchanged a few texts. The closest we got was he said, on maybe a Tuesday night, I can do it tonight, mate, whilst I'm watching my son play football. Unfortunately, we were playing Wolves that night at Dean Court, so I had to say, oh, not tonight, Callum, maybe tomorrow, but that didn't work. Art Boritz, Kenwyn Jones, couldn't get hold of them. And Eddie, who I was texting for about 2 years. One of the players who swore me to secrecy gave me his number, and he was silent. And I sent him one last text not long before I had to submit the manuscript, and he did get back to me, and that is the quote that's on the back of the book. I lifted it from there about it being such a wonderful season, but unfortunately, you can imagine he's a very busy man, and he couldn't do it, but at least he got his quote on the back of the book.
But in many ways, that's so Eddie Howe, someone that, you know, almost likes to propel everyone else into the limelight apart from himself. He even found the celebrations of winning the championship. I found from, you know, just looking at him, you could tell that was almost uncomfortable for him. So in a way, it's almost apt that you don't hear from him. But what you do is sprinkle some of his quotes throughout the book, don't you?
Yeah, well, that was from the research online mainly. I started that during COVID, and obviously everybody had time on their hands. You guys were doing a lot of great interviews with the players who were available then. They had a bit more time to speak to you, and I started doing the research then and dug out a lot of stuff from match reports and interviews post-match. And just cobbled it all together. And so there's plenty from Eddie in the book, but it's from that era. He doesn't have his own chapter, but if you read it, hopefully you'll be able to reminisce along with the manager and the players.
One of the things I learned is that the team had a lot of self-belief. I think that Tommy Elphick has numerous times, and I think in this book as well, is, you know, self-labelled them a team full of misfits, but they just came together, and they came together really well to then win the league. I mean, what did you learn whilst doing this? I mean, I'm sure plenty, but are there any stories that stick out from what you learnt about it?
Well, yeah, the team spirit was sky high. And a lot of the players said that was unusual in their careers. They hadn't been in other dressing rooms like that, and it made a massive difference. They all seemed to get on, they enjoyed each other's company, and they were effective together on the pitch, and they were all focused on the goal. And every single player said that. They all talked very highly of the manager, couldn't speak highly enough of him, and he made a massive difference to all their careers. A lot of them were lower league players, and he made them into Premier League players, you know, obviously with their efforts alongside that. And that was really the message that came from all of the players. And in almost every case, they said it was the greatest achievement that they had in football. I think Jan Kermagon said something about playing for Reading at Wembley, but I might have edited that out. So
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear it. I mean, how long did it take you to write this?
Well, I'm a bit of a plodder.
Okay.
So I don't write fast. I'm not Charles Dickens. But it probably took, in terms of the day I started to the day I finished, it's hard to say when the day you finish is, but about 3 years. But that, don't get me wrong, that wasn't 3 years in front of the keyboard. It's,
No.
you know, you're just stealing a bit of time here, my lunch break, evenings, weekends, trying to speak to players when they're available. So in total hours, I don't know, start to finish, 3 years. Yeah.
We're a club that struggles when certain people leave, one of which recently has been Dom Solanke, which is, you know, we've all got to come to terms with that. And we also struggled when Eddie left as well. But one of the standout quotes that I seem to remember was from November, where he was linked with other clubs. And he said, if I'm to be a Premier League manager, I want it to be with Bournemouth. I mean, that is really telling, isn't it? I suppose your love for the guy, even though you didn't directly speak to him, it must have been enhanced through what all these players are saying about him as well, because no one has got anything but good words about him.
Yeah, and also going through the quotes from that season from Eddie, I think it probably showed me that I didn't realise at the time that he had a harder edge to his approach than maybe his reputation. His reputation is so glowing amongst us and generally in football, certainly amongst Newcastle fans.
So is this the title of the video, you know, Eddie the Hard Man? Is that what you're saying, Michael?
Well, with the players, they all said he was a lot different.
Okay.
Off camera, you know, around the club. He certainly had a hard edge. And also, I think with the media as well, when you actually hear him read the quotes, he was pretty direct and, defended his team, defended his players to the hilt. And, obviously the players appreciate that very much.
He was very economical, I thought, with his words in press conferences, and he would know how to close down journalists in a really nice way. Did you find that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much media training Eddie's had, but he could really set up his own media training school, because he never seems to put a foot wrong with the media. And also, going back to what you said about if he was going to get to manage in the Premier League, he wanted it to be with Bournemouth, wasn't tempted away. I think we're seeing a similar thing now with England, and he's not really added any fuel whatsoever to the fire regarding leaving Newcastle. And that again is testament to his character.
I think it's, of course, you're telling, I suppose, an emotional high that starts off and it only gets better. But there are, there are some sad little moments. For instance, like Steve Cook, almost regretful that he never had a song. And there's a few players like that for Bournemouth now that still haven't got a song, who I desperately feel sorry for. And also the testimonial thing as well. Yeah, well, Steve, it was another one I had a bit of trouble tying down for an interview. That took about 2 years. But I suppose it's the players that are, maybe plying their trade now. It's always going to be harder, isn't it?
They're busy men. Yeah. He said he wasn't a popular player, and the reason that he thought that was because he didn't have a song. Now, I think we both know he was a popular player and still very much thought of as a legend. And the testimonial thing was to do with the change of ownership, and I think that was the main reason. He had a deadline or a time when it had to be done by, that ran out, and so at the moment that's kind of gone. I hope this year they're doing stuff for the 125-year anniversary. I hope that there'll be at least one event to mark the 10th anniversary of us winning the championship. I just remembered, me and my boys, they were much younger then, they were little boys, and we did have a little Steve Cook song based on the theme of Match of the Day, but don't ask me to sing it because I've forgotten the words.
Okay, I was going to put him under pressure then, but not to be. So how do you think this book differs? I sort of mentioned that it hones in on this season, but how do you think this book maybe differs compared to other books on AFC Bournemouth that chart our rise up through the leagues?
Well, Neil Medram's book's a really good book. Really enjoyed it. I read it very quickly. I got it for Christmas one year. It was done probably by Boxing Day. That's the whole journey under Eddie Howe. I can't quite remember when it ends, maybe not with relegation. This one, very much focused on that season. It was written by a fan, obviously, myself. But I wouldn't say it was from a fan's perspective. It's not about me. It's about the players, the manager and the club. And it's just a detailed account. And having the contribution from 10 of the squad, gives you the inside story of what, for them, as I said, for the majority of them, was the high point of their careers.
What I like about it is that we all know what's going to happen, but it's drawn out with the player interviews being intermingled between every month. So there's still this kind of tension of will they, won't they? But we all know it does. And then obviously it culminates in May, and obviously the promotion, the championship. I mean, what do you remember about that day? Both the Bolton one and the championship itself, because no one thought we were going to be winning the league. No one.
No. Big surprise. Very fond memories. As I've mentioned in the book several times, I think after 10 games we were 15th. I remember very clearly leaving Dean Court one evening, maybe in the autumn, after we'd lost to Leeds. And just kind of we were shaking heads. I was still doing the All Departments podcast then. I think the following night we recorded, and I was saying to the guy who I had on that I don't think we're going to do it this season. It's not going to be our year. And he was going, yeah, no, I agree. Well, luckily we ate our words, and then we went on this magnificent journey. We led the league for like hundreds of 150 days, something like that. So we were easily the worthy winners. But the way it happened was fantastic. We had that weekend when Karanka sent the goalkeeper up at Fulham.
4-3 was it? Middlesbrough.
And against Fulham.
That was on the Saturday, wasn't it? So our game was on the Monday.
And so Fulham then broke and scored. That Scottish forward, whose name escapes me, Ross something, was it?
Ross McCormack, was it?
Yeah, big money signing at the time. And Harry Arter was at the game because Scott Parker got him tickets. That's in the book. And And so we knew, because we had the game against Bolton on the Monday night, that in order to go up, we just had to win that game. And as the players say in the book, and they all said to me, if we'd have played that game 10 times against Bolton, we'd have won every single time, because they were just, they were ravenous. And they were on such a high that we really couldn't lose. And so that was a fantastic night at Dean Court. But for me, actually, the Charlton game, which I know not everyone was able to attend because there was a limit on tickets, although they did provide a few more tickets at the Valley, was the highlight, because winning against Bolton and going up was, at the time, you sort of knew it was going to happen. That night when I left home, I thought, well, we're going to win. Yeah. We're going to get promoted. It's going to be brilliant, and it was. But at Charlton, the way that things played out with Howe scoring, I think that was his name, for Sheffield Wednesday, late on against Watford, and we were already 2-0, maybe 3-0 up by then. And so it was only in the dying minutes of the season that we actually won the league. And I've really magnificent afternoon. I didn't actually want to leave the Valley. I remember saying to my son, who was 8 at the time, I don't know if I want to leave here, because I don't think anything out there in the real world can be better than what's happened in here. It's kind of all downhill from here. This was so good. So, it's just brilliant. And we've had some good times since, but I don't think anything will ever top that.
Does it still make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end when there's that cheer going around when the news of that goal for Sheffield Wednesday filters through? Because I remember watching it again, because I think during COVID, the club played the full replay. I think Adam Blackmore was commentating that day. And we'd just scored, Matt Ritchie just scored to make it 3-0, his second goal of the game. And there was the cheer, and as a cheer does, it ends up dying down. But then it sort of comes back up again. And then Willow saying, what, have they scored? Something happened? And then the news came through. What was that like being in there?
Well, there's a lot of people checking their phones, which, as you know, when you're in a crowd, and this was 10 years ago. So
not as advanced.
No, and phones weren't really working, but you could see that the players were leaping into each other's arms on the pitch during the game. And word quickly got round. And I remember a lot of people, there was a lot of this, people literally wiping the tears from their eyes, because, you would feel for any club that you support, but the journey we'd been on and the way it happened, it was, it was a sort of high that is difficult to achieve in any other area of your life, really.
Did you get the feeling that the players that you chatted to, they do fondly remember it as, the moment of their career, or did they just, did they convey their own emotions to you in just the sort of way that, it's just another footballing experience? Or could you tell that this was a special thing?
Oh, yeah. They all loved talking about it as well. They all said that it was great to reminisce, because when it happens at the time, you have the celebrations and you're on a high, and that probably lasts for a while, but then the next season starts, you get on with your life and you're kind of busy and you're sort of living in the now, aren't you? So I don't think they've had that much chance to reminisce, most of them. So just chatting for 45 minutes, an hour, they all seem to really warm to that. And I think they liked the recognition. And some of them, I can't remember who, but they almost got the impression that they thought it had been forgotten.
Wow.
Yeah. It's because I don't really think many of them live in the area anymore, and they don't hear much about it. But, it hasn't been forgotten. Certainly not.
It certainly hasn't. And it hasn't, if you get this book. And you would believe some of the stories. This isn't clickbait or any kind of bait, but some of the stories there, I'm not going to retell them. You need to get the book in order to find out about them, because it's more than 300 pages, and just the memories come flooding back. And you can win one of these as well. And the way to do it is we're going to put out a tweet. We'll put the link to that tweet in the description below. If you're listening via the audio pod, just check our Twitter account. It's on X, so x.com/AFCB podcast. One of the things you'll just need to do is retweet it, but then follow Michael's Twitter account as well, all departments, because I'm sure there'll be some nuggets and some little links to buy the book on his account. There's a link to buy the book as well below. Plus, you may have seen that there have been a couple of other videos recently where you can have another chance winning that. And just by putting an emoji in the comments, we gave you 2 chances for that. So it's going to be on Facebook as well. We've only got 1 book to give away. So we're doing the whole scarcity thing where you really, really want it. We're looking forward to sending us out. And Michael, you're going to sign it for us as well, aren't you?
Of course. Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, make sure you get your hands on this. Check the link below. Michael, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me on. And well done on the podcast. I know it isn't easy, having done one myself many years ago. And like I said, you guys have made my dog and pony effort look even smaller in comparison, because you do a wonderful job.
And what is the best place to buy this? Is it on Amazon? Is that the best place?
Amazon's the best place. We're here in Far Post today.
Yeah.
So in Folkestone, near Folkestone Station, you can pop in there, local bookshops and all major bookshops, and online. So it's available everywhere, but I think if you've got a local bookshop that stocks it, you can go in and ask, then that's supporting local businesses, so that's really appreciated.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of conversations about the 10 years, I'm sure, but also the 125 years, given it's the anniversary of the club. And of course, the Newcastle game, there's going to be the meal beforehand. So we're looking forward to that. We're not looking forward to having the conversations about replacing Tom Solanke. We need to talk about it. So look, make sure you do a couple of things, like the video, subscribe as well. And no doubt we'll see you in the next one. Up the cherries.